think it's recording.
Are you ready then? Yeah. Wait, did you have the access code?
Let me do that. Access code is OC6. Is that an I? That's definitely not. Yeah, it's definitely 9. Or it could be possibly no. We'll find out.
Oh, jeez.
It's definitely. Oh, I know that for
Yeah.
sure. They need to work
Okay,
on
I'm
that.
gonna hit end session then for now.
Okay.
Because this question's going. Okay, so like when we're ready, or you can just leave your phone, right?
Oh, okay, and then I just add.
Wait,
You have every.
it was showing up the.
Oh, oops. Yeah, I could just use my phone.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Shall we begin?
Yeah, good.
All right, everybody, we're going to get started because this is going to be a very packed lecture as always. So quiet down. Please, as a reminder, every lecture, try to leave every third row open so we can have TAs easily get to you if you have code problems. All right, so we're going to begin. This is lecture 3 for Intro to iOS Development. Hopefully you're in the right place. And we're going to start with some announcement first. So we have an AR, if you saw the Piazza post, we have an ARKit workshop, and you will get extra credit. So we are hosting a workshop, we as an app dev, on Monday, March 19th at 6 p.m. in Phillips 407. So if you want to, you guys have some basic understanding of iOS now, so you probably could actually go and understand what's going on. You know, AR is like the new big thing. So you can learn how to make an AR app. Probably going to be pretty simple, but if you go, you can receive 3 points of extra credit. Just make sure you sign in at the event, and then we'll be able to give you guys extra credit. So we're going to go over a small review since last lecture. So if you guys want to go to polo.cornellappdev.com and put in that access code, OC6IDV, and we will go over 2 questions. I'll give you guys a second to get the access code. Does anyone still need the code? All right, good. So, we're gonna, here's the first question, and we're gonna set the poll. So, you're at an interview to work as a lead iOS developer at Apple. Congratulations. They ask you one simple question. If you get the answer right, you get the job. So, what functionality can you achieve with UI text view? So, we have A, you can allow the user to type multi-line text. B, you could display multi-line text like a list without user interaction. C, you cannot disable user interaction. The user is always allowed to interact with the text view. Or D, A, and B. So we'll give you like 35 seconds to put in your answer. You can talk about it with your neighbors. All right, about 10 more seconds, and then we'll go over the answer. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Okay, so you guys, most of you guys said D, A, and B, and yeah, that is correct. So quickly, as a reminder, UI text view could be sort of like you want to have your user put in a bio of themselves, so you could have multi-line text, or you could use it to display like a list of items. As you saw in Project 2, hopefully you guys use UI text view. Dope. Let's go into question 2. The interviewer lied to you. They want you to answer one last question. When using NS layout constraints, what do you have to always do before setting up constraints? I'm going to start a new question, and you guys should be able to start now. So we have add the view to the subview and set translate auto resizing mask into constraints equal to false. You always have to set the leading, trailing, top, bottom, height, and width constraints for each UI element. You do not need to do anything before setting up constraints. It's just magic. Specify, and you have to specify the color of the UI element before you add it. Give it about 10 more seconds. All right, I'm going to share results. All right, everyone guessed A, and congratulations, you guys all got a job. So that's one thing that we did run into some people on Piazza. Some people forgot to add the translates auto resizing mask into constraints equal to false, and that threw off their whole layout. So make sure you guys always do those two things, and we're going to keep reminding you until you 100% have it, and then you'll always be able to have awesome auto layouts. All right, so I want to introduce a quick tool for your auto layout, so you guys should really pay attention to this. So it's called WTF Autolayout, and it's a really great tool to figure out constraint errors. So if you notice you try to make a constraint and it doesn't look like how you planned it to do, and something's not working, you go to the console and there's like all this like random like constraint stuff that you don't know how to read. So if you go to this website, they can have a guide and you sort of paste that code that you don't understand, and it will parse it and display it nicely for you and tell you all the constraints you're trying to do. I highly suggest it. We used it gave it to some people on Piazza and it really helped them. So I would save that, bookmark it, because it really helps a lot. What the fuck, auto layout? All right, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Monica, and she's going to do the rest of the lecture.
Okay, so that was a nice review, and you guys should definitely use this tool. It's very helpful. Because auto layout errors, if you guys may have encountered when you're making a project, can be very confusing, and this tool definitely helps you figure out what they're saying. So, but anyways, for this lecture, what we're going to talk about is creating multi-view applications. So right now, you guys have been creating single views, right? You only have one view, which is like a grocery list. But this week, we're going to be talking about, how do I make multiple view apps, because usually most apps and apps that are interesting have multiple views and you can interact with them differently on the different views. So kind of like some ways, one presents views is, one of the ways is through a navigation controller. So this is a video, so it should be playing, but it's not playing then. Was it? Okay. Or maybe it just doesn't play on my thing. It's okay. Let me go back and activate that video. But yeah, so as you can see, this is one way to kind of show different views. It's through a navigation controller, and you kind of know it's through a navigation controller because you see how that top bar doesn't really change, or it does change, right? But there's always going to be a top bar that's the nav bar. And kind of what the navigation controller does is just manages your view controller. And so when I'm clicking on Wi-Fi, clicking on Bluetooth, I'm pushing another view controller on top of this navigation stack. And then when I'm going back, I'm kind of popping it off the navigation stack. So to kind of get a better idea, more visual, what does that mean? So these are a couple of diagrams made by Apple. I think they're pretty nice. So you can, basically what a navigation controller does is kind of, every time you push on a view controller, you kind of add it to the stack. And whatever's on the top of the stack is what gets shown. And then when you go back, right, you just push it off the stack. So whatever's on the bottom, gets shown. So that's kind of the left picture. And the right picture just is depicting kind of how the view hierarchy works. You don't need to know the tab bar, window, whatever. But what I do want you guys to focus on is the navigation views. So that basically, what I said before, that the nav bar or the navigation controller is all it is really just this kind of container that has a nav bar, and it kind of manages which view controllers show up. So does anyone have any questions? Okay. Uh, yeah. Okay. Cool. And then so another way you can show things is kind of modally. And so this is when like the view kind of comes up from the top, and doesn't really use a navigation controller. So you can see, right, this view just comes up from the top. And basically what that's doing is just presenting a view controller like, right on top of another view controller. So there's no stack, there's no navigation controller. You just put a view on top, a view controller on top of another one. So the other view controller is still like kind of active behind that view controller. So yeah, those are the two ways, and that's what we're kind of gonna go over today. Is kind of like how do I present things modally and then push views onto the navigation controller. Any questions before I move on? Okay. Yeah, so then some of you guys, I noticed maybe like one or two PX questions on, you guys are kind of using frame-based layout, and I know like we do kind of want you guys to use auto layout, but sometimes it's hard to get away from frames. So I thought I might just go over briefly like what is the difference and why did we choose auto layout. Um, so So kind of like the difference, right, is so last lecture you guys learned about about placing constraints, like putting things relative to each other. And so you can see in the right picture, right, that's what it's kind of doing. It's saying like, okay, I want the top view to be 20 pixels from the super view, and I want it to be 20 pixels down, all that. So it's like all relative. But frame is something that you might be a little more familiar with, or might seem more familiar because it's all coordinate based. So like basically with frames, like the top left corner is 0, 0, and then if you, the y-axis like goes down, so like the higher as y increases, right, that just means you're going lower in your view. The x-axis just kind of goes that way. So x-axis is pretty normal. The y is the one that's kind of tricky. So that's kind of like a difference, and the reason why we chose to do auto layout and not frames is because frames can be very, very manual, and like they're also not very flexible, right? Because with the frame, you're kind of saying like, I want to be 20 pixels away from the left-hand side. But then what if your screen size is like smaller, right? Maybe like 20 pixels is too much and it's not like completely in the view of your phone. Like especially, you know, for like smaller phones like the iPhone 4 versus iPhone 10, that's like a huge difference in screen size. So that's kind of like why we moved away from frames. It's because they're like pretty manual. They're not very flexible. They don't give you that like doesn't your apps won't necessarily look good in all screen devices with frames. So that's kind of why I moved away. But I am talking about it because I'm depending on whether we have time, I might go over it. But I just want you guys to be aware that there are different ways to lay out views. So that's kind of like what I went over. And then I will go over this later because I want to get to the demo. So let me just start that.